welcome back to our channel. Thank you for your continued support. All content I create is purely speculative and based on personal experience. If you find the video interesting and helpful, please support me with a like and a comment. The relief came to the Dupree family in a terribly distorted way, as if fate had smiled and then immediately used that very smile as a knife. Anita emerged from the rediagnosis with a still stiff gait of prolonged sleepless nights, but her eyes gleamed with a rare light, a light she thought she had lost since the first verdict was delivered in the cold examination room. The doctor chose to speak slowly, clearly, and cautiously, as if laying brick by brick on a fragile bridge. The initial test results showed signs of error. The data, when compared, had changed the picture. The parameters that had once prepared them for the worst were no longer absolute, and it was even possible that Anita had been misdiagnosed in a way that a family like the Dupree would never accept, not just out of fear, but out of the humiliation of helplessness. Vernon, standing beside her, a man accustomed to weathering political storms and power struggles with a polite smile, suddenly felt a weight lifted from his shoulders, as if a heavy stone had been removed from his chest. In Fairmont Crest, where the wealthy concealed their panic, behind polished parties and perfect handshakes, the good news was like a gust of wind blowing away the collective makeup. For a moment, everything seemed to return to its former order. Anita was alive, the family was safe, power was secured, and whispers would be silenced by the new truth. But that order was merely a thin pane of glass over a deep chasm, built on an assumption no one dared question at the time. If something had gone wrong, where did it lie, and had it shifted the real illness to someone else? The joy, before it could even be called a celebration, turned into a choked sob, as if the air in the Dupree house had suddenly changed, becoming colder, heavier, and the familiar walls began to breathe out danger. Anita, who had once believed she could control everything, with money, fame, and a web of intertwined relationships, realized for the first time that there were things that couldn't be commanded, couldn't be bought, couldn't be erased with a phone call. A miracle, if it existed, turned out to be cloaked in a cruel joke, giving her hope only to force her to see the price of that hope. Nicole was the first to sense something was amiss. Not because she heard jargon like data comparison or test series, but because she saw the doctor's reaction as his eyes scanned the file and paused for a moment, a brief pause, but enough for someone living in a world of carefully measured words to understand that a piece of the truth was being withheld, and that truth wasn't good news. Nicole, the eldest daughter of Anita and Vernon, had been raised as a symbol of inherited dignity and power, and was the best at standing tall in the face of public opinion and transforming pain into a composure that intimidated others. But that very quality made Nicole hate being treated like a protected object. She hated being thought too fragile to face the truth. She hated it when the family silence became a locked door right in front of her, and worse, she hated it when that door was locked with reasons disguised as love. If Anita had just been exonerated from her illness, why was there an unprecedented look of panic in Vernon's eyes, a panic that didn't belong to someone who had just received good news? Why did the accompanying medical assistant avoid looking directly at Nicole, as if afraid of being seen through? Why did Vernon's phone vibrate and then abruptly cut off, a swift, survival-defining action, as if it weren't a normal call but a death knell? These small details pierced Nicole like needles, not enough to kill instantly, but enough to make her realize that somewhere a truth was slipping from their grasp, and if they didn't seize it, it would choose to fall in the most cruel way possible. Then the truth arrived unexpectedly. A private phone call, a quick meeting in a closed hospital room, a flip of a page in a file that someone thought could be concealed by the thick layers of privilege. The error wasn't a harmless machine error, not a misjudgment to smooth things over, but a mistake in the sample sequence, the identification code, the final confirmation step skipped, or adjusted by human hands. Nicole didn't need anyone to say it directly in a harsh tone. She heard her name in the fragmented pieces, overlapping test times, close-up file codes, unusually rapid sample transfer, signatures showing signs of tampering, and the results the family thought belonged to Anita actually belonged to Nicole. Meanwhile, the corrected results for Anita were like a curtain drawn at the right moment to hide an even more terrifying truth. Nicole felt as if someone had just squeezed her throat, not because she feared immediate death, but because she feared how people would look at her from this moment on. As a problem to be solved, a PR crisis, an internal incident to be controlled before it leaked out into Fairmont Crest. Cancer, in their world, was more than just a disease. It was news. It was a weapon. It was the enemy's pretext to pierce the fortress with a well-placed needle. And what about Anita? That question hung not only in Nicole's mind but also in the heartbeat of the entire family, like a ticking time bomb. Because there was something more terrifying than cancer, whether Anita knew or not. If she knew, how would she react when her good news was built on her daughter's flesh and blood? Would Anita accept that miracles don't come for free, that it had been exchanged for someone she loved with a strict and conditional love? Or would she turn the truth into a strategy, Nicole's pain into a record to be managed, the illness into a battle for information control before it turned the Dupree household into the amusement of the upper class? But if Anita didn't know, if Vernon was keeping her in a false sense of security to help her recover, then who was making the decision for whom? And had that decision already slipped into a form of betrayal? Vernon, who always spoke of honor and honesty, was crossing the line by hiding the truth about their own daughter from his wife. And Nicole, taught that family was a fortress, how long could she endure the feeling of being a secret buried within that very fortress? Nicole didn't cry immediately. That only made those around her more alarmed. A woman crying upon hearing she had cancer is an understandable reaction, something that can be met with hugs, comfort, and solace through treatment plans and promises. But Nicole stood still, her eyes as cold as glass. In that moment, she saw her life split in two. Before and after this mix-up. Before, she was Nicole of parties, of composure, of rational decisions. After, she would be Nicole of treatment schedules, of painful nights, of facing pitying glances, of being the subject of whispered conversations over drinks. And the cruelest thing was that she had to accept that her illness might have been silently present all along, but it was only allowed to come to light when Anita was saved. Nicole asked herself a question that sent chills down her spine. If there hadn't been a mistake, if her results hadn't been tampered with, would she have discovered her illness sooner, or would she have remained in the illusion of her invincibility until it was too late? And if someone deliberately manipulated the test results, whose real target was Anita or Nicole, did they want to break Anita down with fear, or shatter the family by striking at the eldest daughter, the pillar of their family? A mistake can happen, but a mistake tainted by human hands always has a motive. Is that motive money, power, or a form of revenge disguised in the white code of medical ethics? Werner tried to remain calm, but his hands betrayed him with small movements, clenching, releasing, clenching again, as if trying to grasp something slippery. He looked at Nicole as if she were something beyond repair by force. He had shielded his family from scandal, used his influence to block unfavorable news, and turned a scandal into a minor issue with a well-chosen phone call. But Nicole's cancer wasn't something that could be kept silent forever. And in their world, information was always a weapon. If this news leaked out before they were prepared, it would be twisted into the most malicious story, that the Dupree family manipulated healthcare, that they used their power to manipulate results, that Anita was saved by shifting death onto her daughter. Who would believe them if they said it was just a mistake? Who would give them a chance to explain when they had lived in privilege for so long, when everyone was already waiting for an opportunity to bring them down? That thought clung to Vernon like a second knife. Not only did he fear Nicole's illness, but he feared the world would use it to crucify the entire family. And, true to the way Fairmont Crest operates, the whispers didn't wait for anyone to breathe. An unintentional or intentional remark from an acquaintance about seeing Vernon in the hospital with an expression unlike someone receiving good news, a message circulating in the elite's private chat group, a question typed, deleted, and sent again like an arrow testing the wind. What were the Dupree family hiding? When the rumors began to shift, Anita was no longer sick, but Nicole was. They immediately turned more venomous. Did the Dupree family use their power to manipulate the outcome? Is Nicole taking the blame? Is this the price of power? Nicole heard these questions, and her anger flared up in a dangerous way. She feared not cancer as much as being turned into a story for others to enjoy. She began to want to fight back, but how? To reveal the truth and be scrutinized, or to remain silent and let the rumors kill her before the disease could. Anita also saw the battle coming. She knew how to quell rumors, but she also knew that suppressing them too forcefully would only fuel suspicion. And in her heart, even before anyone had said it, a question had already taken root. Was this misunderstanding a deliberate attack on the Dupree family, and if so, would the mastermind stop at Nicole? Ted received the news in the most painful way, not from Nicole, not from Vernon, but from an outside source, a whisper that had passed through 3 layers of people, distorted but still cruel enough. Nicole had cancer, and the Dupree family was trying to hide it. Ted stood frozen, feeling as if someone had kicked him in the chest. In that moment, memories of Nicole flooded back like a tide. Her pride, her toughness, the times she masked her weariness with a perfect smile, the silences in their marriage that he had once thought were merely emotional distances, but which turned out to be swallowed cries for help. Ted had once believed divorce was the end, a cut to prevent further suffering. But this news rendered all reason meaningless. He began to wonder, had Nicole known all along without saying anything? Had she endured it all alone while trying to live a normal life so no one could find her weakness? And was the test mix connected to the sordid world of Fairmont Crest that he had once hated, the under-the-table deals, the quid pro quo favors, the people willing to turn anything into an advantage, even life itself? Ted wanted to rush to her, but he knew Nicole hated pity. If he appeared too suddenly, she might slam the door shut, for he would drag with him the shadow of the past, of their broken marriage, of their unfulfilled promises. But if he remained silent, he would be making himself a coward. He was caught between 2 painful choices, confronting the situation and facing rejection, or silently caring and living with guilt. And in that guilt, Ted began to sense a secret greater than the illness, a secret of manipulation, of an invisible hand, of a power struggle that might have stained Nicole's blood. If he dug deeper, what would he discover? Someone in the hospital, or someone right in Fairmont Crest, who bought the way through a test sample. If he discovered it, would he speak out to save Nicole from being exploited, or would he hold back to avoid shattering the fragile piece Nicole needed to survive? Meanwhile, Nicole began to seek the truth in her own way, cold and ruthless, as one must do when realizing they are caught in a game where life is merely a pawn. She demanded a review of the records, a review of the sample transport chain, a review of the timestamps and signatures. Small details emerge like cracks in glass, a timed confirmation step, an unusual shift change by a lab employee, an internal symbol appearing in the appendix without explanation, a log entry missing at the most crucial moment. Nicole understands that the healthcare system can be manipulated like any other, and she understands the Dupree family has enemies. These enemies might want to harm Anita, but if Anita is saved, they could shift their target to Nicole, tearing the family apart from within, leaving Anita both relieved and heartbroken at the same time. Was the mistake truly accidental? Or was it a double-edged sword, sowing panic by making them believe Anita was ill, then, upon discovery, shifting the tragedy onto Nicole to make the Dupree family a laughingstock, creating a perfect loophole for blackmail and public manipulation? And if it's true, who was close enough to know that Anita and Nicole's test dates coincided, who had the authority to interfere with the process, who harbored enough animosity to turn illness into a weapon? Anita, at the center, gradually felt the glass cage of truth tightening around her. She returned home with good news, but her joy was veiled by the uneasy gazes of her loved ones. They tried to act normal, hot tea, fresh flowers, routine inquiries. But that very normalcy smelled of lies. Anita wasn't easily fooled. She heard Vernon's furtive footsteps in the night, heard interrupted calls, saw Nicole avoid her gaze. Anita's suspicion always came with a dangerous element, the need to control at all costs. She could accept her near-death experience, but she couldn't accept that there was a truth within the Dupree household that she wasn't allowed to know. Nicole is torn between two conflicting needs: the desire to break the silence and reclaim control of her life, and the fear that speaking out will cause Anita to collapse under guilt or, worse, react in the coldest way, turning Nicole's illness into a crisis management campaign. Prioritizing reputation over her heartbeat. If Anita were forced to choose between truth and control, what would her mother choose? If Anita knew, would she embrace Nicole or ask first who knew? If Anita knew, would she cry for her daughter or order someone to keep quiet? Silence turned into violence. Vernon wanted to speak but didn't dare. Nicole wanted to hear but didn't want to hear from her father's mouth. Anita wanted to ask, but her pride wouldn't allow her to admit she was being kept in the dark. The entire Dupree family was caught in this whirlwind until the truth burst forth. Like a heavy collapse, not noisy but crushing. Vernon admitted it, Anita listened, and her silence was more terrifying than any scream. In the mother's eyes, guilt and strategy flashed simultaneously, like two cross blades. She looked at Nicole, for the first time pulled from her throne of power back to being an ordinary woman, helpless in the face of her daughter's illness, but Anita remained. Anita, she wouldn't allow herself to collapse before the world. She could embrace Nicole for a split second, then immediately think of the best doctor, the best treatment, absolute confidentiality, and control over public opinion. Nicole saw this, and her heart felt both warm and cold. Warm because her mother still loved her, cold because that love always came with conditions. Don't let the Dupree family lose face. Ted appeared on the periphery, not playing the hero, just standing there with the gaze of someone who shared her pain, but that very gaze also presented Nicole with a new question. Would she allow anyone to approach her again, when every step could become a loophole for public opinion to crawl in? And as the sky over Fairmont Crest began to cloud over, as whispers turned into weapons, as a mistake bearing the scent of human hands emerged as a trace of conspiracy, Nicole stood before the mirror, placed her hand on her chest, felt her heartbeat, and wondered, was the most terrifying thing yet to come truly chemotherapy and pain, or the moment she discovered she was not just a patient, but a chosen target in a power struggle? If Nicole continues her investigation, what will she bring to the surface? An enemy within the hospital, or an enemy within the Dupree household? And if the truth is revealed that there was interference, will Anita choose justice for her child or choose concealment to protect the empire? Ted, if he can piece together the final picture, will he speak out to save Nicole from being exploited? Or will he remain silent and become an accomplice to the silence? No one has the answers right now because this is only the beginning of the storm, and in Fairmont Crest, the storm never reaches one level. It always opens darker doors behind it, as if each time one thinks they've hit rock bottom, another secret awaits to be brought to light, cold and unforgiving.